to leave Berlin, but Goebbels refuses to go. While Junge types 3 copies of the will, Hitler marries Eva Braun, his longtime mistress. Goebbels, Bormann, and Dr. Werner Naumann are witnesses to the ceremony. Municipal councillor Walter Wagner acts as wedding official.
I sat down amongst 12 to 15 people who were chattering about another world. They said nothing about the war, or the wounded and the dead in the emergency wards, which they could certainly have asked me about. They just talked about their wonderful times in Bavaria and all the festivities they had had there. It was utterly unreal.
Hitler and Braun enter his study, arm in arm. He drinks champagne and even jokes with his men. She is elated. Awaiting the final attack, switchboard operator Rockes Misch recalls the atmosphere inside the bunker.
Das war alles, wie soll ich denn sagen, wie in einem Betonsarg, das man mit dem Leben abgeschlossen hat.
It was like being in a concrete coffin, as if all life had ended. We didn't know whether it was day or night.
Wir wussten, Hitler verlässt den Bunker nicht mehr.
We knew that Hitler wasn't going to leave the bunker again, and that the Russians were very near the Reich Chancellery, and that this was the end. I remember the last time I came into the bunker and closed those steel doors. They were like sluice gates. As I pushed on the handle, I thought, now I'm going to die. I'll never leave the bunker again.
At midday, Hitler conducts his final war conference. The end is inevitable. It is simply a matter of time. Midway through the meeting, news arrives of the fate of Hitler's good friend, Benito Mussolini. Mussolini and his mistress are arrested on their way to Milan. 2 days later, they are shot. Their bodies are taken to Milan, where they are strung up by their feet in front of a Standard Oil garage. Outraged citizens throw garbage at their corpses. Hitler fears this final humiliation and will not let this happen to him. There will be no escape from the bunker. But the few remaining followers trapped with him must still decide: capture, suicide, or escape. Berlin, April 30th, 1945. Hitler contemplates his final day. Outside, Soviet troops vie to raise the red flag on the Reichstag. Whoever does will be decorated a hero. After 8 hours of combat, they finally reach the roof of the building near the shattered dome and wave the red flag triumphantly. The next day, the event is restaged for the cameras. The Reich Chancellery is then set ablaze by Soviet artillery. Hitler's adjutant, Otto Günsche, tells the Führer's chauffeur to bring 50 gallons of gasoline to the Reich Chancellery garden. The day before, Hitler had declared that only 2 creatures had remained true to him: his dog and his mistress. He then had his beloved dog Blondie killed with cyanide capsules. Hitler and Eva Braun now enter his study. Günther guards its double doors. In the next room stand the remaining members of the Nazi High Command: Goebbels, Bormann, Krebs, Oxmann, and General Bergdorf. At 3:30 p.m. inside the study, Eva Braun takes poison, and Hitler shoots himself in the head with his Walther 7.6mm pistol. Heinz Linge was Hitler's valet in the bunker and witnessed the scene.
I was the last who said goodbye to him and the first to see the body. He and Eva Braun died alone.
Günther and Hitler's doctor Ludwig Stumpfegger then wrap Hitler's body in a blanket and carry it up to the garden. Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, carries Eva Braun's body. Goebbels accompanies them. Their bodies are tipped into a shallow grave, doused with gasoline, and set on fire. Once the bodies are consumed, the men again go underground. Goebbels is now Reich Chancellor and calls a meeting of the remaining senior Nazis. Heinrich Müller has already disappeared, his whereabouts unknown. Other than the Goebbels family, there are less than 20 members of Hitler's personal court left in the bunker, and 800 German soldiers in the Reich Chancellery buildings. Goebbels and Bormann dictate a letter to Marshal Zhukov, the Soviet commander. Hitler is dead, and they ask for a ceasefire so that injured soldiers can be removed from the Chancellery. Krebs, a Russian speaker, takes the letter to Zhukov's headquarters in an armored car flying a white flag. Meanwhile, Arthur Oxmann offers to evacuate Goebbels' 6 children from Berlin. But Goebbels refuses. He does not want them to live to see him branded a war criminal. On May 1st, Bormann sends a message to Dönitz in northern Germany regarding Hitler's last will. Testament in force, it says, "I shall join you as rapidly as possible. My advice is to delay publication until then." Krebs returns with no deal. Soviet commanders are only interested in an unconditional surrender. But Goebbels refuses to surrender. He orders the remaining bunker staff to break out at 9 p.m. and save themselves. Goebbels then asks the SS doctor Stumpfegger to give his 6 children poison. Magda, their mother, gives them each a chocolate before they are injected with morphine. While they sleep, poison is placed in their mouths. Goebbels and Magda leave the bunker arm in arm. They swallow poison, and Goebbels then shoots himself. SS officers fire 2 more shots into the bodies. There is a quick, ineffective attempt to burn them. At this point, another group of the bunker staff break out and disappear into the ruined streets of the city. Gasoline is then poured into the Führer bunker and set on fire. With flames engulfing the fortress, inside the bunker, Krebs, Dr. Stumpfegger, and General Bergdorf commit suicide. Arthur Oxmann escapes with Martin Borman, but they lose each other in the rubble. Oxmann, head of the Hitler Youth, avoids capture for 7 months, but he is finally arrested by the Allies in December. Members of Hitler's private staff are not so lucky. Erich Kempka, Hitler's chauffeur, and Heinz Lenga, Hitler's valet, are quickly captured by Russian soldiers and interrogated. General Weidling, commander of Berlin and the last senior officer in the bunker, arranges a ceasefire and then surrenders. When Soviet troops arrive in the garden of the Reich Chancellery, they find the half-burned bodies of Goebbels and his wife in an open grave. Inside, they find the bodies of their 6 children, as well as the officers who had committed suicide. On May 2nd, the fighting in Berlin finally ends. Over 200,000 German citizens and soldiers have died. 5 days later, Admiral Dönitz orders Generals Jodl and Keitel to travel to Eisenhower's headquarters in France to sign an unconditional surrender. 3 days later, the German surrender is confirmed at a ceremony in Berlin. Top Nazis scattered throughout Germany are now looking for escape routes. Himmler, former head of the SS, tries to flee in disguise. Wearing the uniform of a discharged Gestapo agent, he heads west. He has shaved off his mustache and wears a black patch over one eye. But British soldiers are arresting anyone associated with the Gestapo. Himmler is picked up northeast of Bremen. At Lüneburg, he is examined by a British doctor. During the examination, he bites on a cyanide capsule concealed in his mouth and dies almost instantly. Hermann Goering, head of the Luftwaffe, surrenders to U.S. troops less than 3 weeks after his escape from the bunker. He demands a talk with Eisenhower. The request is denied. But as the weeks pass, several key Nazis are still missing. Where is Heinrich Müller, head of the Gestapo? Or Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary and the most senior of Hitler's henchmen to avoid capture? His disappearance is a mystery. 30 years later, a disturbing set of clues shed new light on one of the most startling vanishing acts of World War II. Martin Bormann was one of Hitler's closest confidants. His disappearance from the Führer bunker, one of the greatest mysteries of World War II. Some believe that Bormann died during the final moments of the battle for Berlin. Arthur Axmann, commander of the Hitler Youth, claims to have seen the body lying under the Invalidenstrasse Bridge in Berlin. But an excavation in 1965 fails to locate it. Bormann may have escaped to Bolzano in Italy with his wife and 9 children, according to documents declassified in the 1970s. There are scores of other sightings, many in South America. Some men, because of their striking resemblance, are even accused of being Bormann. Then, in 1972, the West German government claims to discover Bormann's body at a building site near the Führer bunker. A pathologist examines the corpse. A year later, He declares the skull is definitely that of Borman, but something is peculiar. The soil found around the skull is thick red clay, not the yellow sandy soil typical of Berlin. Red clay like this is found in Paraguay in the German settlement of Hackenau. This is where Borman is reported to have lived after the war. Paraguayan secret police claim he died and was buried there in 1958. Colonel Catalino González Rojas remembers seeing him.
En una casa que no quisiera dar el nombre, ¿verdad? Era un señor alto, de muy buena presencia. Aquí en el Paraguay siempre tuvo una simpatía muy especial, los nazis, se le apreciaba mucho.
And the mystery deepens. The recovered skull shows 8 fillings that were not recorded by Borman's dentist just before he vanished. This suggests the dental work was completed after 1945. The skull's upper jaw bridge had also shifted 2 millimeters, a process associated with aging. In 1998, Pierre de Villemarest, a former French intelligence officer, conducts his own investigation and uncovers a set of documents from the East German police called the Saragossa File. One document claims that Borman is still in Germany in 1946 and about to move to Madrid. Further research corroborates this with claims that Borman was seen in Berlin on February 19, 1946. Another less convincing claim is made by Christopher Creighton in his 1996 book, Operation James Bond. Borman, he writes, was smuggled into Britain by Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, along with a team of British commandos. The plan was to gain access to Nazi gold hidden in Swiss banks using Borman's signature. Borman's son, Adolf, a Jesuit priest, who then left his order to marry a nun, is convinced his father died while fleeing Hitler's bunker. In May 1998, genetic tests are carried out on the skull, confirming it is Borman's. His remains are cremated by the family, and the ashes scattered in the Baltic Sea. No neo-Nazi memorial can be established around his grave. But there is a persistent rumor that Hitler did not die in the bunker. The Soviets claim they never found his corpse. Some say Arthur Oxman took some of the Führer's ashes away in a box to be buried outside Berlin. Russian soldiers discover a dead body that looks like Hitler, but German officers later refute the identification. Stalin says he does not believe that Hitler killed himself, but he is lying. On May 4th, Soviet soldiers did find the bodies of Hitler and Eva Braun outside the bunker. Their remains are placed in 2 crates and removed for further examination. Outside Berlin, an autopsy is carried out by Soviet doctors. The autopsy report from the Forensic Medical Commission of the Red Army states that splinters from a vial of poison are found in the mouth of Hitler's skull. But there is no bullet hole. By the time the autopsy report is released, the body is said to have vanished. Photographs are the only remaining evidence. Soviets claim it was completely burned and the ashes scattered. In 1972, photographs of the skull's teeth are compared with X-rays of Hitler's head taken in 1943. It is an exact match. But where is the body? 23 years later, in the Russian State Archives in Moscow, an archivist claims to have found a box containing part of Hitler's skull, complete with a bullet hole.
I'm certain what we have here can prove what happened in Hitler's bunker. It's extremely important because other experts never had access to Hitler's remains. They only had interviews with witnesses.
Many Nazis do escape Allied justice, aided by Odessa, an organization of SS members disguised as a charitable body. Many find their way to South America. SS General Heinrich Müller is another key Nazi who is missing from the Führer bunker. His last recorded order was, "Defend Berlin to the last man, the last bullet." Witnesses say they saw him in the bunker the day before the battle for Berlin ends. He then vanishes. It is assumed he died in the final fighting. But secret documents released in 2001 by the National Archives in Washington, D.C., finally solved the mystery. It appears now that Müller was held by U.S. forces in an internment camp in northwest Germany at the end of 1945, and was then employed by American intelligence as an undercover agent during the Cold War. His knowledge of German communists was used to combat the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe. Müller, however, remained America's #2 most wanted missing Nazi well into the 1950s, just behind Martin Borman. Between November of 45 and August 46, 21 senior Nazis were put on trial at Nuremberg. Goering is sentenced to death, as are Generals Keitel and Jodl. But by 1946, 120,000 Nazis remain on the Allies' wanted list. The Nazi regime, once a massive network that stretched across Europe, is now dedicated to hiding those members who have escaped. In the last days in the Führer bunker, Hitler ordered that each man decide his own fate. Their last acts paint a portrait of betrayal, resignation, and failure. Capture for Hermann Goering. Suicide for Goebbels and his family. Suicide for Eva Braun and Hitler himself. But for Martin Borman and Heinrich Müller, the two men who eluded a massive manhunt, their life beyond the bunker remains shrouded in mystery. One of the greatest secrets of World War II.